Stanlio. Gerry Armstrong, what a worker he is. Striding away there with Hamilton to his right, Norman Whiteside up on the far side of the area. Still Billy Hamilton, he's got past Tendilio. Armstrong! Northern Ireland have scored through Gerry Armstrong. A mistake by the goalkeeper, and it's the 100th goal of this World Cup tournament.
Joining me today is Gerry Armstrong, the former Northern Ireland international, who provided what was arguably the
Proudest moment in Irish football history, surely.
Having started off in Northern Ireland playing Gaelic football, Gerry made a late move over to the UK with Tottenham aged 22. Gerry then made the move to Watford, where he scored the club's first ever top flight goal. Whilst living in Spain and playing in La Liga, Gerry talks about his experiences of playing in the likes of the Bernabeu and the Nou Camp, the latter in which he scored a goal in. Not only can he boast of playing against Maradona, he can also boast of the fact that he drank with Maradona the night before a game. Alongside this, Gerry gives an inside scoop on his call with David Beckham regarding Real Madrid, meeting Messi in a hotel in Florida, and many more fascinating insights on this week's episode of The Player Position. Thanks so much for joining me. How are you keeping?
I'm keeping well, Adam. Thank you. All good. Getting ready for Christmas.
All getting ready, yeah. So I'm just going to have a chat about your career. So I suppose starting off, I know you were much more into the GAA when you were a kid, and then you got into football later. So what were your earliest memories of playing football as a kid?
It was all Gaelic football and hurling right up till 1971, and then opportunity came. You know, during the Troubles, it was internment had come in, and a lot of players in the school team that I never played for were interned, and the teacher who was in charge of the soccer team had asked for players to come forward for the soccer team, and I volunteered to come forward, and he picked me as a centre half. So I played centre half in the school team, and we won the Sir Robin Kinahan Cup for the first time ever. I don't know if they ever won it again after that, but we won that, and I played centre half, and I managed to score a couple of goals, and I got an invite at the end of the final from a guy who was representing Everton and said, would you be interested in coming over to Everton on trial? And I said no. I said I don't really play soccer. I wasn't interested and left it at that. But then I got a suspension a few months after that from the Gaelic. I broke a guy's jaw and in a fight, and ended up getting suspended for about 5 or 6 weeks. So I took up soccer, and I played a wee bit of football that summer for St Paul Swifts, and the manager, Jordy McCabe, he played me up front as a centre forward, and I scored a few goals. So with the suspension and then playing a wee bit of soccer, at one of the games I was invited to go along and play with Crummock Albion, which was a decent amateur league side in Belfast. And the manager there, Sammy Watson, had invited me to play there, and I played probably 3 or 4 games for them when the manager and assistant manager of Bangor Football Club, who were in the Irish League, they had watched me play and invited me to come and train with them on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So I went down and trained on the Tuesday and the Thursday, and basically I was on the subs bench for the reserves the following Saturday in a semi-final of the Stevenson's Cup, and I played. I came on with 15 minutes to go, and I played, and I scored a goal and I made a goal when it was 1-1, and unfortunately I got sent off before the end of the match. So it was on about 8 or 9 minutes, did a bit of damage, and that was the start of my football career, and it all took off after that.
And yeah, you moved to Spurs at the age of 22. Obviously, that's much older than most lads would go over to the UK. Did you think at that stage had you lost a bit of hope, the fact that you were that age, or did you always feel like you could go over, or what was it in your plans?
I hadn't planned to be a footballer, to be honest. It wasn't. I studied to be an architect, and I worked in an architect's office for a couple of years, and then I didn't like, the way it was going in the architect's office, and I went into local government to work. So football was just something I did in my spare time. Played soccer on a Saturday for Bangor, played Gaelic on a Sunday for Antrim or for St John's, my club team, and I had no plans to actually become a professional footballer. I was just enjoying my sport. But the troubles obviously were bad. And in 1974-75, when I had a lot of interest, a lot of clubs were watching me: Arsenal, Spurs, Coventry, Celtic, Liverpool. I mean, the list, there was a load of people come to watch me play. And it was Tottenham who had actually asked me to come over on trial. And I did. I went over with a player called Johnny Jemison. He and I both went over from Bangor to Tottenham on trial, and spent 4 or 5 days there. Played a game with the reserves, Tottenham against the RAF. Scored a couple of goals, and didn't think too much after, because I thought we did well, both of us, but didn't hear too much afterwards. But obviously the clubs were in discussion, and it was Arsenal came really strong. Then Arsenal really pushed to try and sign me, and at one stage I thought I was going to be signing for Arsenal, but Terry Neal came over in the October-November of 1975 and said to me, "Look, we're going to sign you," and I signed a contract with them. But I didn't leave till maybe a couple of months later, and I was just 21 at the time, so I was happy enough to have a go, but I only had a 1 year contract with a 1 year option, so there was a lot of pressure on me to do what I had to do in the first year, and I found it tough at first because I'd never trained as a soccer player, but I had other attributes which I found out became um, very important to me: to have the power and pace and attitude and determination. I think all of those helped me.
Do you think when you went to Tottenham, obviously you hadn't played football at that level before? Did you feel like it was a massive jump up from where you'd ever played?
Absolutely. I mean, the full time training I loved. I loved training morning and afternoon, and a lot of the first team players, I would train with the first team on the reserves, but a lot of the first team players wouldn't come back in the afternoon. They'd go off, but I was always back in the gym. I loved just training and working on my skills, because that was something I needed to work on. Only being a professional footballer, a semi-professional for 3 years, I think I had a lot of work to do, and yeah, I enjoyed that. I've just embraced it. But I found out, I watched the likes, when you're watching Glenn Hoddle as a 16 and a 17-year-old and doing what he can do with the ball with both feet, it makes you worry a little bit about what my part was going to be in it, what my role was. But I suddenly found out after 3 or 4 months that I could play a big part, and there was other things that I was good at that they weren't good at, and that's when I started to make an impact, and did really well. And as a result of that, I got called up. Well, I was doing well with the reserves, but I got called up for the first team and put on the bench a couple of times. I remember going to Everton at Goodison Park and winning 2-0, and I was on the bench but never played, didn't come on. I think John Duncan scored both goals, and it was a great win for us. Terry Neal was our manager, and he had recommended me for the international team, and I was called up then in the April-May to go away with the international team. That was I think that was 1976. Yeah, I went away to Israel and was in the squad. Didn't play again against Israel. We drew 1-1 with Israel, but that was introduction to football, and it gives you encouragement. I think an experience, learning from different, aspects of the game, and for people putting you in with better players, to go into the squad and see the likes of Pat Jennings, obviously, and you've seen the quality of Alan Hunter, and the experienced players like Brian Hamilton and Sammy McElroy, Martin O'Neill. I mean, these were all players who had been playing a lot longer than me. So you learn from better players, and obviously that gave me encouragement as well.
And like you said there, like to go from not really having much of an interest in playing football to all of a sudden you're playing for Tottenham, and it's obviously such a high standard. What did it feel like going to these massive stadiums like Goodison Park, Anfield, Old Trafford at that time?
Playing against bigger crowds at Croke Park, not being funny. The crowds didn't bother me. I enjoyed it. I was a competitor. I like competing. And it was me against him, whoever my opposition player was. And, I just loved the competition, and I loved the training. And I felt I was getting fitter, and I learned an awful lot, certainly in the first 6 to 12 months of my career. And it's just the more you play, and if you're playing with good players and you're learning good habits, you're going to pick up a lot of skills and techniques and things that can only enhance you. And as I got older, I certainly started learning more and more about football. But at Tottenham, Keith Bergenschot took over shortly, a year and a half after Terry Neal had signed me, and Keith had ideas about me playing centre half, and I played a lot of games for Spurs as centre half. I was quite a good utility player in those days when you only had one sub, and I could come on and play virtually anywhere on the team, so it was easy to be picked as a sub. But I just looked upon it as learning curve and getting better. But then my international career took off because, I started playing for Northern Ireland. My first game was against West Germany, who were world champions at the time, and George Best and I played up front. That was a real huge experience for me. And watching somebody with the ability that George had, and even then he was overweight and he probably wasn't the player that he should have been because he'd been playing in the United States. But boy, oh boy, did he have some skill and technique, and his talent was just natural. So again, that was all. It gives you such a lift when you play with that type of quality. And obviously we got beat by the Germans, but it was a step on the ladder, and I just continued and kept getting games here and there. And my first real breakthrough was against Belgium in World Cup qualifier at Windsor Park, and we beat them 3-0. I scored twice, scored 2 goals, and you're up and running. The fans are backing you, and you feel confident. The confidence plays a big part, especially as a striker. And if you feel, your confidence is there, your instincts take you into the right places. You know where to go, where the ball's going to arrive, and you're the more experience you get, you have an idea roughly of where the ball's going to land, and that helps as well. So I just continued my career, but 4 or 5 years down the line, I couldn't see myself moving forward at Tottenham, and I'd already asked a year before that for a transfer, and Keith kept playing me as a centre half and a fullback. I played fullback, midfield, played lots of positions, but I wanted to play up front, and that's where I played for Northern Ireland. But Keith had ideas I was going to play centre half, so didn't fancy that. And then Graham Taylor from Watford came in 1980, which was a huge move for me because Watford were the division below, and they were quite low on the table, although they had games in hand. And I decided that it was a good gamble, and he had been chasing me for quite a while, a year or so, and which he told me, and happily I signed for them, and I played up front for Tottenham, and I learned a lot from Graham Taylor as a manager and as an individual coach, because the training was a lot harder than it was at Spurs, but I got myself even fitter. When I thought I was fit when I was at Tottenham, but I was even fitter when I went to Watford. And then that was the World Cup campaign started in 1980, and we ended up qualifying for the World Cup. We beat Israel in the last game to qualify at home, and we beat Portugal at home as well, which was a big result for us. Beating Sweden, it drew with Scotland home and away, and Scotland were probably the strongest team in the group. But to qualify for a World Cup final, I think that's something special for any footballer. It's a pinnacle of your career to go to a World Cup final. So that was something to look forward to.
Yeah, we'll touch on the World Cup, but I just want to go back to what you said about George Best. Like, that must have been such an unbelievable moment. Like, what was your memories of playing with him, and what is it with someone, like, I know you said he was kind of coming down to the end of his career at that stage, but what is it with someone like him who's so unbelievable? What is it that really sets him apart from the other top players that you're playing with?
He just had natural ability, and you don't know that until you actually train with him. And you're playing 6-a-side and 7-a-side games, and he just had either foot. He would stick it through your legs. He played 1-2s off your shins, and he went past you, and it was like we were all half a second or a second behind him, and his balance was brilliant. He had this movement, and he used to swerve to the left and to the right, and he had everybody falling over. He was like a ballerina at times. He was so good, but he loved his football. He was a good trainer, and I think it was only the pressure was the biggest problem for George as a younger player. I don't think any player had been under that sort of pressure ever before, and he was the forerunner for all the superstars of today, and he took a lot of pressure on himself, and he didn't cope with it that well. But when he went to the United States, he felt he had more freedom, didn't have as many intrusions, but obviously he wasn't playing to the level that he should have maybe been playing when he was playing in the United States. But he was enjoying it, and he was happy, and to play with him was a big achievement for me to actually play up front, make my debut with George. And again, you watch him play, and he was such a smashing guy, such a lovely guy, very intelligent, always chatty, always got time for you. Um, just it was a dream for me because he was a boyhood hero.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to have played with someone like that. Yeah, you said there about going to Watford. You obviously had a massive moment in their history, scoring their first ever goal in the top flight. What were your memories of that, and just overall your time at Watford?
It was just after the World Cup in '82. I had a good World Cup with Northern Ireland. I'd scored 3 goals, and I came back into the squad. And I mean, nobody knew if they were getting picked in the squad. It didn't matter who you were. With Graham Taylor, and Graham Taylor had a great young team, and you know, he had Nigel Callaghan on the right hand side, who was an England under 21 and quite young as well. But wow, could he cross a ball, and had he got great feet, he could score goals. Nigel. And then on the other side, you had John Barnes, exactly the same. Brilliant athlete, great ability on the ball, 2-footed, could head it, could cross it, could score goals, could do it all. So that was like myself and either Luther Blissett up front or Ross Jenkins. And that game against Everton, um, Graham Taylor dropped, or he played myself and Ross Jenkins up front. So Ross is 6'4", and he was the target man, and I played off him, and it worked a treat. Luther Blissett played midfield, and he was attacking from midfield. It was a great performance from Watford against Everton, opening game of the season, and the opportunity arose through, again, created by Ross Jenkins, and I got on the end of it and stuck it in the back of the net. So that was the first goal for Watford in top flight football. And then there was a bizarre opportunity shortly after where Pat Rice crossed the ball, and the goalkeeper stepped back when he caught the ball over the line, and the linesman flagged and the referee gave it. So, I mean, it was a crazy game, but it was a great start for us. And we started like a house on fire. We were flying. We went down midweek to Southampton and beat them, and they had Kevin Keegan and Peter Shilton and Mick Mills, and I mean they had a superstars Mick Shannon team, and we went down and beat them. And then I think the next one after that was Swansea at home. We beat Swansea. John Toshek was the manager. I think we beat them 4-5-0. I mean, it was crazy, and we were off and running, but we were very young and inexperienced. And I think that year, um, that's probably the reason why we didn't win the league. We came very close to winning it. Liverpool won it, and we finished second by beating Liverpool last game of the season. And that was a huge achievement for a young club under the guise of manager Graham Taylor. He was brilliant, and he was good at the psychological stuff to get inside your head and get the best out of you. He was very clever at that.
What kind of things would he be saying to you, or like in terms of the mind games he'd be playing? What would he be doing?
Well, everything was done on a stopwatch. Your times were taken for pre-season, and when you did the cross country, every individual player was timed, and we all had our times in the summer when you were fit, and those were kept. But you continued your training, and the runs were like 8 to 10 mile runs. We're talking cross country, and through Castleberry Park, and up and down hills and whatever. And didn't matter what the conditions were, but we were training like that again in October, November. So, we really did push the players, and we did morning and afternoon sessions. Graham was very much of that type of manager where it was all about preparation, and he worked hard on free kicks and set plays, which I learned a lot from him as a manager. But yeah, so when you believe and you see the results of what he's saying, the more shots, the more crosses you get in, the more chances you have of scoring a goal. And I'm watching the statistics now, and I'm seeing games where, teams don't even have a shot at goal. They might have a couple of crosses. They don't have a shot on target. They've had 2 efforts. They haven't hit the target. So, I mean, that's pretty boring. But with Watford, when we played, when we had the ball, it was 4-2-4. And when we didn't have the ball, it was 4-4-2. It was dead straightforward, but everybody had to work. And if you weren't fit, you were never going to get picked in the team. So I
Yeah.
learned lots of stuff from Graham, and I really enjoyed my 3 years at Watford. But unfortunately, halfway through that season, or early on in the season, 3 months into the season, in top flight football, I jumped for a ball and landed awkwardly, broke my ankle and my leg, so I was out for over 3 months. which was a big blow, but couldn't wait to get back in again. And then the following year, I'd had a lot of interest after the World Cup. The following year, I had a lot of teams from Germany and Spain who were trying to sign me. And eventually I decided that I'd take a go in 1983. And I went and spoke to a couple of clubs, but I went and spoke to Mallorca, Real Mallorca. And that was my first opportunity to go and decide whether I wanted to play abroad. And I took the gamble and went and played for Real Mallorca and had a great time there and learned an awful lot in those 2 years.
Yeah, so just before that, then obviously was the World Cup in '82. Um, I will touch on the Spain game, which is obviously the big one for you afterwards. But just firstly, at the lead up to that World Cup, and then obviously the first two games, what were your memories of that? Like you had 2 points after the first two games, and like the lead up, it was a good squad. Like, were you expecting to get out of that group or to top it?
Well, we had planned. It was a plan. Martin O'Neill was the captain. Martin, very astute and clever manager. And Martin had us all sat down and we discussed it. And this is before we went. We looked at the teams that we were up against. The draw was made in the January, and we knew we had the host nation Spain, who were red hot favourites with the fact that they were home. They were a home nation, and they had some really good players. But Yugoslavia was a really good team, and they had scored a lot of goals in qualifying. So we knew that was the main opposition. Honduras, we didn't know an awful lot about, coming from South America. And we felt that if we could get a draw in the first match against Yugoslavia, that would be a good result. And we felt that if we could beat Honduras in the second game, we would only need a draw, and it would maybe go to goal difference and stuff like that for the qualification. So we had that as a plan. It didn't work out, obviously. Honduras actually came back at us. We should have been maybe a couple of goals up on the night in Zaragoza when we played Honduras. We went 1-0 up and hit the post, and then we should have maybe scored another goal. But then they had a couple of chances and came strong in the second half. Humidity played a big part. It was over 90-degree humidity, and that was after 8, 9 o'clock at night, you know. But players did really well, and we came away with a 1-1 draw. A bit disappointed, but it meant that we had to beat Spain in the last game. And we felt we could beat anybody on our day. And of course, Martin had us prepared the day before and told us that we were going to be under the cosh. The Spaniards would be coming at us, and our first 20 minutes we knew what was coming. And we did. We defended really well and made sure they didn't penetrate, played them across the park rather than let them penetrate directly. So it all went okay and we worked well, but it became a real physical match because Spanish were frustrated. The fans were getting on their back and they started kicking us. And the referee was South American, and none of us spoke Spanish, so we were under the caution. Didn't really get too many results from the referee, but we got a chance early on in the second half, break away. We didn't have too many opportunities, but we broke away, and the goalkeeper hadn't had much to do, but Billy Hamilton put in this incredible cross, and Arcanada, the goalkeeper, came for it, palmed it out in front of me. I hammered it hard and low, kept my head down over the ball. It ended up in the back of the net, and we beat them 1-0. But that was a fantastic result, probably the best result ever in the history of Northern Irish football. But we certainly, as a team, we had this collective unit, a band of brothers we were, and we loved meeting up. We loved playing for our country. We loved having a bit of crack, and we were a hard team to beat. We never lost too many games in that 6 or 7 year period. When I was playing at my peak with Northern Ireland, we were a nightmare for any team to come and play against.
And you know, when you scored that goal against Spain, did you realise that the significance of it? Obviously, it was going to put you top of the group, so you knew that. But did you realise how important it was to the fans and to the country?
Not so much. I mean, it was all about winning for us that night, and to qualify into the quarterfinals. And the fact that we didn't just qualify, we topped the group and put us in a group with Austria and France, which was great. But we went back and partied, and it wasn't until the next morning, we woke up. Well, woke up. I don't even think I went to bed. It was about 5 or 6 in the morning, and Pat Jennings and I went and had some tea and toast on the balcony of our hotel room and watched the sun coming up. And you don't get many days like that, as Pat said to me. He said, this doesn't happen too often in anybody's career. He said, to beat the host nation, to top the group and go through the quarterfinals. And this was both Pat and I's first World Cup. We didn't know we were going to do it again 4 years later. But, I mean, it's crazy. Football's crazy in that way. and you can achieve an awful lot if you've got the confidence and belief and the determination which that squad had, But yeah, we didn't realise until we went down and Billy Bingham had said, go and check the foyer. There's telegrams all around the foyer, all over the walls, hundreds of them. I mean, talking 2, 3, 400 telegrams from all around the world. And it was then that you realised what we'd achieved and what it meant to the country, the whole country, not just Northern Ireland, but the whole of Ireland was celebrating. And, we had family and friends from America, from Canada, from Australia, telegrams coming in from everywhere, from every denomination. And we suddenly realised we had achieved something great. And there was parties in the Shankill Road and the Falls Road and everywhere, all over Northern Ireland and Ireland. So it was a great occasion, and it gave the people a really much needed boost at the time. The country was struggling, still under pressure. There was no good Friday agreement in sight or anything, hadn't even been discussed. So all of that was significant. And but then we started to realise, hold on a minute, we've really lifted the spirits of the people and given them something to cheer. So we were very proud of that. I think we're probably more proud of that than anything else.
Yeah, like you said, football, especially during a tough time, is such an outlet for people. Would you say that was your best ever moment in your career? Like, is that the thing you look back on now and you're most proud of?
100%, 100%, because our preparation was so good. The players prepared really well. Billy Bingham took some gambles. He took 2 or 3 big gambles. I mean, we had a team that had qualified and he changed it, and nobody had seen Norman Whiteside until I saw him in the final of the Youth Cup in the April. And end of April, Manchester United and Watford fought that out, and Watford won it, I think, 6-5 or 7-6 on aggregate. And it was a fantastic game. The second leg was at Vicarage Road, and I watched Norman Whiteside for the first time playing up front with Mark Hughes, and couldn't believe he was only 16 then, hadn't turned 17. It's crazy. So basically, I watched him play and thought, wow. And then I was chatting to Billy Bingham when he called him into the squad, because I think he broke into the Manchester United first team and got a couple of runs. I'm not sure, maybe Brighton, he made him come on as a sub against Brighton. And Billy Bingham included him in the squad. That was a stroke of genius, to be honest. And then I thought everything else was pretty straightforward, but he had asked me if I'd be interested in playing in a more right-sided midfield role, and it would give me more space. I could use my athleticism. I was very fit, and he said you can protect Jimmy Nicholl on the right back position and protect him down the flank. He said, but you're going to be coming in, and he picked Norman Whiteside on the left hand side. Norman was naturally left footed. Big Billy was 6'3", 6'4", big target man. So that was the front two, and then I went and slotted into the midfield alongside Martin O'Neill, Sammy McIlroy, and David McCreary, and that was the midfield four. And David was the anchor man of those three, and I played that right hand side role where I was going up and down from penalty area to penalty area, and I had a lot of pace and energy, so it suited me, and that was a stroke of genius as well. They didn't expect that, and then he changed it at the back instead of John O'Neill, who had a great qualification with Northern Ireland, played really well. Him and Chris Nicholl together as a partnership. He brought John McClelland in, and John brought an extra dimension. John McClelland had a fantastic World Cup. He had a brilliant World Cup, showed a great composure on the ball, had athleticism. He was quick over the distance, and that was another stroke of genius from Billy Bingham. So all of these things happened for a reason, and I think it all helped us on our journey.
And you talked about Martin O'Neill, his leadership in the dressing room. What was he like as a character in terms of kind of helping the group stay together and just his overall presence? What was he like dealing with people?
He was great crack. He was always funny. Martin had a brilliant sense of humour, but he had a dry wit as well, and he was always very intelligent. He had studied at Queen's University, and he had studied law and criminal law as well. And but Martin very rarely got anything wrong. When he planned the bonuses, when he planned the strategy for the squad, and he talked about the games, he was spot on. He was always going to become a manager because he was so astute. And when you watched him then with what he did at Wycombe Wanderers, it was no surprise to me when he took over at Leicester and won 3 trophies at Leicester, and then went to Celtic and won another 7 trophies at Celtic. You know, he just had that nous about him. He was a very smart and clever man who knew exactly what he was going to do. And I think the last time the Republic of Ireland qualified for any major tournament was when Martin was manager as well. So he always had a plan, and he knew how to achieve the goal, and that was something you've got to give him great credit for. He was very clever.
And off the back of that World Cup, then in 1983, you get your move from Watford to Mallorca. Obviously, it was a new experience and everything, but what was the logistics of that like at the time? Were you okay with moving abroad with your family and stuff like that, or what were you?
It was a
What were your
gamble,
thoughts?
Adam. It was a big gamble. I knew it was a big gamble, but I didn't mind that. It was something different, and I wanted to try something different. And uh, I thought this is going to take me towards the end of my career, because in those days, when you get to 31, 32, you know, your career's just about over. But if you kept yourself fit, you could continue. And I wanted to play as long as I could. But, you know, went to Mallorca, learned all about a different type of football, different style of football. It was more technical. They did not like the contact. I was picked because I was a very physical player up front, and the president picked me for that reason. And I used to ruffle the feathers of the centre halves and the goalkeeper and make it difficult for them. And the fans loved that. But we had a lot of technical players. We had a sweeper who was probably the best player in the park. For us, he was just skill, technique all over. But he couldn't defend, he couldn't tackle, which was crazy for me. And that's what you find out, you know. And I learned this when I was at the Spanish football, and I got a real insight. And they didn't really train hard enough for me. I trained hard when I was at Spurs and when I was at Watford, and Mallorca, too hot. They didn't train for long, and it was like head tennis and stuff like that. I needed to do the physical side to keep my physical fitness up. So I used to do a little bit of individual training on my own when I was at Mallorca. But it was a great experience, and I had to learn the Spanish language. That was the biggest problem for me. And I said the same thing to David Beckham when he asked me, and Michael Owen, people like that, when they transferred over, Gary Lineker. I said, learn the language. You know, that's the best advice I can give you. You know, because if you can't communicate with your teammates, you're going to feel like an outcast. And sometimes I think that was a problem for the likes of Gareth Bale in the opening year or two he was there, you know, and you have to really become part of them. And it's their culture, you know, and as a result, I love tapas now. I love my Rioja, you know, you learn all the good things. But it was a great experience, and very glad I did it. And then it led on to me having a career with Sky for 20 odd years in the La Liga team, and that was great fun as well.
And you know, you touched there on Michael Owen and David Beckham. Did they get in contact with you in terms of, obviously, because you were someone who'd gone over there? How did that come about?
David contacted me a couple of months after he had moved, and I used to speak to him on a regular basis. You know, every week he would phone and he would chat. He used to listen to me commentating on the Saturday and Sunday, and then the following Friday he would phone me, usually late, and have a chat. And he was great, great lad, great person, really dedicated, and wanted to do the best he could. And he became, I couldn't believe how well he fitted in as a Galactico, because I was looking at the teams, and you look at Zinedine Zidane and Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo. I mean, the quality in that team, and he slotted in perfectly, and did very, very well, very well.
And yeah, just going back to your own career then. On the 18th September that year, you scored the opener against Barcelona. You went on to lose the game 4-1, but still to score a goal against Barcelona, that must have been unbelievable. And Maradona was playing that game. Do you remember that game?
Can't forget it. It was crazy. I'd never seen Maradona play. I hadn't played in the same pitch as him. I'd heard he was something special. He was going to be the next big thing. Wow. I could not believe how good he was. And he was incredible. He was short and stocky. His um, acceleration, it was explosive, but everything was left foot. And wow, what a left foot he had. And he destroyed us in the end. But I mean, they should have been 2 or 3 nil up before I scored. And Maradona did all the damage. He was going past people. Our goalkeeper made a couple of good saves, and with a couple of last stitches tackles to prevent them scoring. And then our first real chance down the left hand side, we get a cross that comes in, and I get on the end of it and headed it through the goalkeeper's legs into the back of the net, and put us 1-0 up. But all it did was annoy them. I mean, he and Schuster just destroyed us. I think Maradona's pass put Schuster in for the equalising goal, and then Maradona scored the second goal himself, and then he made the next 2 goals in the second half. But that was a real shock to see somebody of that quality. He was undoubtedly, I think, for 3 or 4 years, he was the best player in the world.
When you're on the pitch with someone like that who's just that unbelievable level, what is it that when you're looking at him that you just think separates him from the other unbelievable players that are obviously in the pitch as well?
It's what he can do with the ball, and the ball was like an extension to him. It's like all of us, when I was growing up, you have to work on your skill and technique about how you control the ball. It was like it was attached to him. He was so good, and he was so quick. He was short, stocky, low center of gravity, and he was explosive. And he would go past 2 and 3 players in like a split second, and there was nothing they could do. He was just so good. But it was everything was left foot, and it was like it was stuck to his foot. And I thought, the player who had impressed me the most before that was George Best, and I didn't think I'd ever see anybody who could do that with the ball other than George. But when you watch Maradona in full flight, goodness gracious me, it was incredible. And then when I was commentating, I watched this 17, 18, 19-year-old develop at Barcelona, and that was Messi coming through, and he was another one. Like the ball stuck to him, and every 10 or 15 years, you'll get a player who comes along who has that ability, and he just makes you go, wow, and he gets bums up off seats, not on them. He gets them off the seats because you're just amazed at what he can do. And I was amazed by what Maradona could do. He was exceptional.
And I remember you saying before that there was a couple of Argentinian lads on your team from Mallorca, and they knew Maradona, and you met him. So
Four,
can you
there was
talk through
four of
that?
them.
Four, yeah.
There was 4 of them, and after the first game when we lost 4-1, the boys were chatting. My Spanish was just learned. I was just picking up Spanish a wee bit. I wasn't really that good. It took me 3 or 4 months to get half decent and be able to converse properly. And then we drew them in the cup, and we played them in the Copa La Liga, and then we had to play them in the second leg in the Copa La Liga, and we had to play them in the second leg of the league. So we played them 4 times that year, and the second, third, and fourth time, obviously, we went over to play Barcelona in Barcelona, and the night before the game, the guys, there was 3 of them. There was El Torito Suvaria, and then we had Oriana, who was a winger, and we had Veron, who was a striker who roomed with me. He was my roommate, Veron, and a great guy. And then there was another one, I think was an Argentinian, was Rolando Barrera, who played up front as well. So there was actually 4 or 5 Argentinians in that squad. So they all decided that we would go and meet him for a beer the night before the game. And we went across to a wee bar across the road from our hotel, and Maradona turned up, and we had an hour with him, had a couple of cañas, a couple of short beers, and he was great entertainment. He was great fun, very, very humorous, and had us all in stitches. But he was just larger than life, and I was fortunate enough to meet him a couple of times after that as well.
Oh, that's unbelievable. It's such an interesting story. Just in terms of your time then as a player in Spain, like you were saying that it was a very technical game and you were a very physical player. Did you feel like it really suited you, the fact that the players probably didn't really want to come up against you in a physical battle, but that's what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I had to make it work for me. So, I mean, over the first year that I was at Tottenham, a year and a half, Glenn Hoddle was just probably one of the best passers of a ball I've ever seen with either foot. And Glenn could drop it on a sixpence from 30, 40, 50 yards away. So when we were training together in the reserves, and then we went on the world tour in 1976, we were roommates, and I was chatting with Glenn, and he was saying, your strength is your pace, and he said once you're gone, he said nobody's going to catch you, and he said like I'm good at delivering the ball. So we were chatting about him passing balls, and whenever he got the ball, he used to look for me and stick it in the channel over the back of the back four, and I was away. And then once I'm going that direction, that was problems for the defenders and the opposition. So you pick these things up, and your teammates, you start to find out their strengths, but then you find out your own strengths as well.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Yeah, so then you come to the end of your playing career. You've had a few spells at different clubs, like you were a player manager at Brighton, and then you get into the Northern Ireland assistant manager's job. What were your memories of that time, and how proud is that to be a part of the coaching staff of your country?
Well, I see. I was coaching at Worthing. I was player coach at Worthing, and we had 3 promotions in 3 years, and we were getting into the conference. But the chairman did a U-turn, and I had been in for the Northern Ireland job, and I, I it was a full time job, and I don't know if I wanted to take it full time because Worthing has put 3 years into and taken us from the Diadora League Division Two, Diadora League Division One into the conference, and I thought, you know, I have to see this job through, and I wasn't going to give up the Worthing job and go to Northern Ireland full time. I was looking at a part time job, and that would have suited me. But I was also starting to work a bit for Sky. They had asked me to come in and do some work for them, so I was doing a wee bit of television work. So I had 2 or 3 options, and then the chairman had said, we're going to go for it now in the conference. We're going to do this. So the budget was going to go up, and then the chairman, Bo Reynolds, came to me and said, "Look, we can't afford to go full time." He said, "So I'm not going to take the opportunity to go into the conference." He said, I'm gonna stay in the league we're in," which I was not happy about because I'd spent 3 years. Well, first year I stopped them getting relegated. The next 2 years was promotion. So I said, "Look, I've done all I can do." So Brian Hamilton, who had got the job for Northern Ireland, had asked me if I'd be his assistant, and I said I'd love to be your assistant. So it was on a part-time basis, and that suited me. So I went in, became part-time manager or assistant manager with Brian Hamilton, and then I was working more and more at Sky and started working at Eurosport as well and doing commentary on football.
And from people from the younger generation, a lot of them would know you as the voice of La Liga. I know I grew up watching, the Messi Ronaldo era, and you were the voice of it all. Were you always interested in media work, or was that something that kind of just came about and you just decided to do it?
George Best got me in. Simple as that. He was trying to get a game organised on a Sunday at Battersea Park, and he had asked me if I was free, and I said I was. And he said to me, "Look," he said, "next Sunday," he says, "you'll be there." I said, "It's going to be a small-sided game, five-a-side. They'll talk about, the benefits of more touches on the ball and scoring more goals, and you didn't need an 11v11 on a full pitch, and you could play indoors. It was all that." So I said, "Listen, no problem." But then George phoned me on the Friday, the 2 days before the Sunday, and said he wasn't going to be able to make it, and I was the only one was actually going at the moment. Could I get another 4 or 5 players? So I did get some more players to turn up, and he said the guy wanted to speak to me anyway, and he said the guy was from Chrysalis, and they were working on small-sided games. But 2 weeks after that, he was telling me when I met him that they had a contract for a year with Sky to do Spanish football, La Liga, and they knew nothing about it. They didn't speak Spanish, they didn't know nothing about it, they had no idea, and they were getting dropped in at the deep end. And would I be interested in going along and obviously being an advisor and being the studio guest for the first show? And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I went along for the first show, and I was studio guest. And afterwards, he said, "I thought it went really well." He said, "What are you doing next week?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Would you come back and be studio guest again?" I said, "Yeah." So then they offered me a short-term contract for 3 months, and then they offered me a contract to the end of the year. And then at the end of that year, Sky came in and took over it themselves. And Sky asked me if I would sign a contract with them. And I was going to sign a contract, but I was working for um, Eurosport as well at the same time. And Eurosport had given me work to go in and do, well, it was European football on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where it was Champions League and Europa League stuff. And you were finding out about all the talent in Europe. And I loved that. The fact that I was getting an insight into the talent that was in France and Germany and Italy and everywhere else. So I started getting a wee bit of knowledge about it all. And then with the Spanish as well, doing the Spanish with the La Liga, you enhance your reputation, and it just grew. It snowballed, and that was the start of it. And I hadn't planned to go into a media sort of role um, from a work point of view, but it happened, and that was all down to George, who introduced me in the first place.
You're commentating for so many years. What are your kind of best memories of working in the media, or you did a big face of the Revista de la Liga show, which was so popular at the time, I remember.
Oh, I love the Revista de la Liga, and Guillaume Balaguer was fantastic. You know, he was coming from a sports journalist point of view, and Rob Palmer, who I worked with a lot, and Kevin Keating, another one. But I worked with a lot of good producers and directors, you know, Stevie Rowe and Dave. I mean, we had so many great people working in that team, and it was a big family. You know, it was like being in a football team, and you feel part of it, and we all helped each other, and it was fantastic. I really loved that 20 odd years, and Sky loved it too because we took them right up the table. And suddenly, from having I think the first viewing figures were about 30 odd thousand people watched the first Spanish football on a Sunday night. And it just grew from that. And then suddenly it's millions. And Revista de la Liga was a new concept. And we talked to players, we talked to um, chairman. I mean, Game used to get some of the chairman from Real Madrid and Barcelona, and the insight we got was incredible. You know, we actually broke the story of Ronaldo signing for Real Madrid from Manchester United. The press didn't break it; we broke it. That was down to Guillaume Balaguer's knowledge and people that he knew, and we chased it up. And suddenly that weekend, we announced that Ronaldo had signed a deal. He was leaving Manchester United at the end of the season and joining Real Madrid. So it was fun. It was exciting, and it was a great 20-year period for me.
And you're talking there about obviously breaking the story with Ronaldo. You hear so much now about these top players like the likes of Messi and Ronaldo. They have huge entourages and they're really hard to get in contact with. But for someone like yourself or Game or someone in those circles, is it actually fairly easy to get information like that, or is it really difficult?
No, it is still difficult. Obviously, it's not that easy. And I mean, I would go through Game now. Game's just written a book. Well,
Yeah.
he wrote a book on Maradona first, and then he's written a book on Messi, and it includes the World Cup as well. So I mean, Game keeps in touch, and now Messi's over in America with obviously David Beckham, and again, we all had a contact and connections with David Beckham, and Game interviewed David Beckham way back when he was playing for Real Madrid, and he had moved to United States, which was that was quite a big move. It was quite controversial that leave Real Madrid to go to the United States. I think David was really brave to do that, but he's proven everybody, you know, that he did the right thing. And then the fact that he was able to go at the end of the season, you know, in January, and went and played on loan in Italy and France. You know, I mean, that's incredible. I think he's achieved an awful lot, and deserves a lot of credit for that.
I remember you saying a story before about meeting Messi in a hotel in Florida. Could you tell me that again? That's always a really funny story.
Well, it was about 3 or 4. I think it was 3 or 4 years into my sort of run in La Liga, and we were getting more and more games. We started working on a Saturday and a Sunday, you know, and then I was working for other team or companies as well, and you know, Saturday and Sunday were busy days. You know, from 12 o'clock midday to midnight, you were busy. After 3 or 4 years, I remember I was so tired at the end of one season. We got to America with the kids to Disney, and the first day we were down, um, our youngest daughter, I think she was about 2.5, you know, and um, or maybe even less. She might have been a year and a half or 2 years old, but she was sitting in the paddling pool, and I was sitting there. I was shattered. We travelled probably quite a while, and the season had finished probably 8 or 10 days before that. But anyway, I remember sitting down, put my feet in the paddling pool, and sitting there thinking, right, I'm going to chill out for the next 10 days. And I saw these people running past me with the hotel robes on, and I thought, oh, and I stepped. My wife says to me, "What's wrong?" I said, "I thought I saw Lionel Messi there," and she went, "You're bloody Spanish football in the brain." And I says, "I know." So anyway, 2 minutes later, these guys come running back again past us, and I thought, it is Lionel Messi. And I couldn't believe it. He was in the same hotel. And he wasn't a superstar then. It was his first or second year where he'd been in the first team at Barcelona. And I remember talking to him and saying, "Hola, Lionel." And then Americans, a lot of them wouldn't have known him
Yeah.
unless they were really devout fans of the Spanish football and Sky. But I spoke to him, and he was really friendly. He was great, and he asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Northern Ireland. He says, "Oh, you speak Spanish from Northern?" I said, "I played football in Spain. I played for Real Mallorca," and I said I played in 2 World Cups, and he was like, "And oh," he said, "Come and meet my father." So he introduced me to his dad and his mum, and the family were all there, his girlfriend, the whole lot. And I was chatting to him, and that they had been there about 4 or 5 days, and then another 3 or 4 days left, and we saw them every day and every night, and they were very friendly, really nice guys, always said hello, and it was just one of those sort of chance encounters, as they say, and that was in our hotel in Disneyland in Florida.
And obviously Messi went on to be the best player of all time, but at that stage you've been watching him a bit. Did you realize how good he was or how good he could be?
Well, we realised how good he was, and it was all about potential. And he had the potential. Nobody knows if he's going to fulfil the potential. He had great ability, skill.
And when you look back at your playing career now, obviously you've touched on so many unbelievable players. Like you played against, great Brazil teams and in the '86 World Cup and stuff like that. Who would you say it was your hardest ever opponent?
Oh, it has to be Maradona.
Maradona.
Has to be. Maradona was unplayable. Seriously, that day I was just so shocked how good he was, and he single handedly destroyed us. And then I watched him do it in Italy when he went to Napoli. He was so good. I mean, I would say, and as a player, the only way to stop them in Spain was by kicking them, and that's what we resorted to at Mallorca. We managed to get a draw in Barcelona, and we had a player called Damian Amur who kicked the lumps out of him, and that was the only way we could stop him playing, because if he got the ball, there was nothing you could do. He could just do anything with it. He was incredible. So we scared him a wee bit, and but that's the style of football now. You've got people who go around, and it's done in a different way in the modern game. But I see football changes every couple of years, and it's been doing that for the last 25, 30 years that I've been involved in it.
And in terms of a team then that you played against, like you played against obviously, like I said, some great teams. What would you say the hardest team you played against was?
Um, I don't know if it was the conditions, the weather, and the altitude, but that Brazilian team in 1986, they were very, very good, and they never gave us a look in. I think Careca scored two, and Josimar scored the other one against Pat Jennings in 1986, which was my last international match. And Pat Jennings, Sammy McIlroy, Jimmy Nicholl. I mean, there was Billy Hamilton. There's so many players in that squad. We were just coming to the end, and they gave us a lesson. They were very, very good, but the heat and the altitude played a huge part.
And I know you stayed in football after you played through the management roles, media, but do you ever look back now and miss playing, or do you kind of think that part of your life is done and you're happy to be finished?
No, I still miss playing. There's nothing you can get. The adrenaline rush you get when you play football and the enjoyment, I still get that. But I'm not sure players get the same enjoyment out of it now. I think it's different pressures. But in my era, I was happy to play in my era. And the players were a lot more honest. And you wouldn't see too much diving back in the 70s and the 80s. But it's now become an art.
Well, yeah, Gerry, honestly, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for taking your time
Adam,
out.
my
It means a lot to
pleasure.
me.
My pleasure. Will I get to see you in the new year sometime?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Definitely some stage in the year.
Listen, Adam, good. Take care. God bless and have a nice Christmas.